generating very many trips there, as you can see from these assignments. I mean, it's less than 10. So, and that's a fluctuation from a Tuesday to a Wednesday.
Any more questions for the, on traffic? You had the accident, if you wanna go over the accident?
Sure. We did look at the last almost 4 years of crash data. There were 0 crashes at any of the entrances and exits to the Osborn. And there was 5 crashes that occurred at the corner of Dale and Osborn Coolidge. And we looked at those 5 crashes. There was no patterns, there was no consistency. Each one had its own individual, unique story. One was a drunk driver, one was an inexperienced driver, another one was distracted, looking at somebody on the side of the road, probably walking their dog. And then the 2 other ones were just unrelated types of crashes. So we look, and all the crashes at that corner add up still below the state average rate for similar classifications of roadways. So those are the things we look for. We look for patterns, we look for fatalities and serious injuries, and we look for, is it below or above the state average? If it's below and it doesn't meet any of those other criterias, it typically doesn't warrant further. There is nothing to fix if you can't identify a pattern or it's above the state average. It's basically indicating that, these are random acts of crashes and there's not a design deficiency or congestion issue or something else that's causing a common cause. That's what we would be looking for, and that's just not there. So yeah, we conducted that.
Are you, anyone else have questions on traffic?
Just quickly, yeah. So I appreciate that you addressed the question that we got from the public at the last meeting about the use of aids for assisted or independent living residents. Did you make any assumptions about the potential for increased use of aids among independent living residents? Like, because it says that there are 22 residents that used private aids, 32 used home care aids from Mount Osborn. How did you factor in the potential use of aids for the increased independent living?
I will let them answer the question about the change in aids, but again, we use ITE trip generation for the generation of the new trips, which takes an average of these types of facilities and what they generate. Yeah.
So you took the average of what's going on now and
Yeah, projected in the future, exactly.
Any other questions on traffic? I have a question on sanitary. In your diagrams, you show a very significant change from the amount going to Pine Brook versus the amount going to America. Can you provide us your correspondence with the operators of the Mamaroneck facility to demonstrate that they have in fact signed off on this?
We can, I don't have that here tonight.
That would be good to have. I'd like to see
And
that.
this is, I will report that we're on ongoing discussions with the city engineer about how best to accomplish the diversion, the rerouting, based on the city has undertaken that we've not seen yet, some additional studies in 2024 in this area. And so we're going to work with them to determine where best to reroute and how best to distribute that. Our proposal was that because we knew from the greater study back a few years ago that there were more challenges to the east than to the south.
Right, we just would like to see some reassurance that they have actually, in fact, signed off. And one more thing, while going back to this new sanitary line that's going behind the duplexes, it's closest to the school.
Yes.
You incorporate that into your schedule, obviously, if you could do that during public wish to speak on this application? If so, please come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Cole McKay. I live at 10 Heritage Lane here in Rye. One quick question for the committee. Thank you for your time. Is this being recorded? And the reason I ask is because I know there's a city council, there's a candidates forum tonight, and I know the last one conflicted with back to school night, and that was recorded. Is this available for the parents of young children or, and council, the other voters in Rye?
I don't know, Christian?
No, it's not being recorded. My understanding from the city manager is that it was required at the previous meeting because there was a conflict with the school board meeting. And so that one was recorded, but this one is not.
Yeah, it's a vital community. There's a lot of conflicts, I guess, but tonight there's a council, there's a candidates forum. It would have been great to have it recorded for all the people that are attending that. And I have a question for the gentleman with respect to the water. You talked about 4 elements on the first couple of slides that were mitigating the water, and one of them was a pipe. I believe it was the second one that you mentioned. And you said it would channel things down toward the basin from one of the entrances, correct? And that's the point where a lot of water has historically become a problem. I understand how gravity works and you've got to send the water somewhere, but is that the smartest place to be sending the water? And I don't think that the berm is going to do enough if there's a large water event, weather event. Are you confident that the increase, do you have a sense of what the percentage increase of the basin is, and will that capture it all? Because it seems like we might be exacerbating the problem with that pipe, not mitigating. Or if you could help me understand that.
Go ahead, Ian.
Okay. So the pipe, let me go back. So the basin that I described, these in orange are the improvements that were done in 2024. All the water along this side, the west side of the campus, is directed either at that time through piping or through overland flow to the basin at the southwest corner. So what the intent of this pipe was to capture overflow from the bioretention basin. In most storms, the bioretention basin, which is a fairly flat grassed area with stones in the center for the channel, would be absorbed into the ground. In heavier storms, that pipe would capture in a organized way rather than having it flow overland, that overflow and direct it to the basin at the south where it would go anyway. So it's a way of controlling that overflow during heavier storms. In most storms, 90% of the storms, it wouldn't get there because it would be absorbed in the basin itself. So it's going, as you mentioned, by gravity. All the stormwater along the west side is traveling south. Anyway, all these measures help to control it, keep it within the site, rather than allowing it to overflow that wall as it did in that.
And is there a release underground somewhere where it goes somewhere else? Or
The catchment on site is that southwest basin. There is a pipe from the southwest basin into the city storm sewer in Field Road. That's where that water eventually goes.
He also asked what the percentage increase in that basin is. Is this one the 20% or the 40%?
Oh, that basin will be increased by 20%. Yes, and it has been calculated to accommodate the additional impervious with a change in impervious on that kind of campus. So there's a series of new measures. There's underground infiltration here at the center along the north. There's porous pavement here, there's porous pavement here, underground detention here. All of those measures are sized to capture their smaller subwatersheds in the proposed condition. And the two larger basins, which are being enlarged, for a particular reason to capture those new areas going in directly.
Have there been any failures since I worked with them?
No.
Have there been big choices since the work with them been? I don't, well, yesterday it wasn't.
No.
Andy, since people are asking engineering questions, can I just throw one in? I'm sorry about the
Sure.
stormwater. I think this tends to be something people want to talk about. I'm struck by the question Nick shared and looking at forms more closely and how deep it goes before you hit anything 30 feet down.
Right.
How do you think about that in relationship to what the community is concerned with the sub-level garages? How does that help us feel better about the sub-level garages? It's almost like 2 layers of impervious. That's the way people tend to think about it who are not engineers. And so can you kind of unpack that a little bit for those of us who are not engineers? Am I making sense? So you have the roof, the buildings, and then you have this graded garage going underneath, right? But you're going deep, you could be hitting rock. What's the engineering of these garages that doesn't affect the flow of water in different ways that we do not understand?
These are all one level below grade garages.
Okay.
So they are, say, with the excavation, they're 14 feet, 12 to 14. So they're not unlike basement. There's no double level of impervious. Impervious is either, when rain hits the roof, the paving, top of the car, it's impervious. The fact that there is no rock or groundwater found in those borings means that there is nothing that the soil will absorb a certain amount. And those infiltration measures that we've proposed are in areas where the soil is suitable for infiltration, and much of the water will go down into the ground. So there's nothing due to the nature of the garage that's going to prevent this. There's no subsurface river flowing underneath this site that's going to be interrupted by the garage. The water is generally going to go to,
The diagram that just shows where the garages are that do not have a building on top.
all the garages have buildings on top.
Okay, so between building 3, the garage doesn't go all the way under it?
I'm sorry, you're correct. Between these two buildings, the garage extends in here.
That's the only area.
So we point that over there, I was taking a note.
You see the two.
The garage is under here.
Right,
Or
okay.
the garage that shows that.
It just passes the circle a little bit. Okay.
And then
okay.
there's the driveway, which will be 100% impervious, so there's those little spaces between
Right.
building, the driveway, and
And those are basically acting as similar to a green roof. They are soil of a certain depth. They will not be impervious to the degree that paving will or building will. And they will, as a green roof does, they will absorb water up to a point. And then the surface drainage system that is taking water off the entry drive and the entry area will take it into the surface stormwater system. So it's both the surface and the subsurface systems are connected and rely on one another. Tie into one another.
Thank you.
Let's go back to, does anyone else in the public wish to speak on this application?
Jackie. I live at the Osborn. Good evening. I've lived in Westchester County for 52 years. 7 years I'm a member of the Scarsdale Planning Board and 3 years as chair, so I totally can sympathize with what you're going through. I'm a 20-month resident of the Osborn, and because I've lived in central Westchester, I rarely spent time in Rye, except for many, many trips to Rye Subaru. I now enjoy spending time in Rye and money in both dining and shopping. The adjustment of moving from a single-family home to a retirement home is not easy. And I'm very happy to say that my choice of the Osborn was the correct one. The staff, the residents, all understand how difficult it is to downsize and move into a new environment. As a result, they make the move-in and adjustment as easy as possible. The many positives of life at the Osborn are the facilities, activities, residents, staff, a beautiful campus, which will remain so, and even the food. As a result, the Osborn is a wonderful place to live at my stage in life. For the residents, the first step of this expansion process was to have a session asking us what improvements we would like on campus to make life even better at the Osborn. Our suggestions then went to the hired consultants, and from there to the proposed expansion plans. I obviously don't need to go over the details, as you are more than familiar with them. Matt Anderson has done an excellent job keeping us residents updated on the process and the planning board process. I encourage you, after appropriate study, to approve the plans, those that living at the Osborn can be even better than it is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
You have your name and address?
I am Elizabeth Boylan, and I'm here tonight to talk on behalf of the Osborn's proposal to the Rye Planning Commission. My husband and I have been residents in Rye since May of 2024, when we moved to the Osborn all the way from Larchmont. For the previous 49 years, we owned homes in the Murray Avenue School District, where our two daughters flourished, graduating from Amerenik High School in 1996 and 2002. All of the research we had done in preparation for the purchase of our first home paid off in the quality of the school system in general, the skills and support of the teachers in particular, and our wonderful neighbors in Larchmont. Since we moved last year, we found much to be grateful for at the Osborn and in the Rye community at large. Since this is pertinent to the proposal, I wanted to share a bit about my background, as Barbara did. I've spent my entire professional career in higher education. About a third of it as a faculty member, and 2/3 as an academic administrator. I learned a lot and took great satisfaction from the renovation and new construction projects that I happened on my watch. The largest project I was involved in was the new Diana Center, a 7-story academic and student services building at Barnard College. Constructed during my 16 years as provost and dean of the faculty. All of the analytical and negotiating skills I learned in my previous 22 years in administration were tested in the planning process, my sympathies, and the construction of the Diana Center, which opened in 2011. It remains a thrill for me to go into its front doors. But so many decisions, key decisions, were made years before the construction and opening day. Once the financing was obtained, we had to hire architects and specialized consultants. I was on a small team who did a deep dive into the reputations of many planning and architectural firms. We did interviews, we visited buildings designed and built by this shortlisted architects. It was fascinating and fruitful. During the project, you become true partners with the architects, bringing together different but complementary perspectives for a purpose, building for generations to come. When I first heard about which architecture firm the Osborn had selected, I was impressed. Beyer, Blinder, and Bell seemed exactly the right firm for this complicated reimagining of the Osborn campus. Bob and I were happy to be in a focus group last year when the BBB planners spent most of the day eliciting from a small group of us what we thought of the initial plans and what particular hopes we had for the final design. The BBB planning team has demonstrated its total commitment to preserving the natural beauty of our campus and to adapting current buildings dating from the early 1900s to new functional ways. There will be new buildings that will meet new needs and are designed to fit into the site in aesthetically attractive ways. I have trust in and respect for this firm. But I also have trust and respect for Osborn's senior administration and its board of trustees, the two groups that must have a common vision and the human and financial resources to make these plans succeed. Matt Anderson and his team, Fred Sykes, board chair, Michael Reed, board vice chair, and Bill Pearson, chair of the board's strategic planning committee, have embraced their responsibilities to keep Osborn residents informed about the planning process. We now get monthly updates and opportunities to ask questions at each residents association meeting, and we look forward to a continuation of these open lines of communication. So please be assured that Osborn residents understand that Rye neighbors and citizens may have questions about the planning process. We do too. We too want to understand the details of the improved plan, the scope of interim disruptions that may be experienced, and the products of an integrated, thoughtful development project that will be an asset for all of us who live in Rye. Tonight is an example of this important deliberative process. So in closing, let me say, doing nothing is not a good option. Pursuing opportunities to allow the Osborn to thrive in Rye for the coming decades is the object, and we all have a large stake in agreeing on that shared goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, Tom.
I'm John R. Peters from 85 Ridge Street. My wife and I feel an affinity for the Osborn. Her mother lived and died there. Like many of the residents who lived their lives in Rye, she returned to be near her family. And like so many Rye families with relatives in the Osborn, we are and were so lucky to have a parent and grandparent nearby. In our association with the Osborn over more than a decade and a half, we were extraordinarily impressed with the director, Matt Anderson. Smart, thoughtful, and honest, he lives in Rye. He raised his family here. He and his wife are extremely committed to the community. This is not unimportant. Perhaps because of this, the Osborn has been a wonderful neighbor in Rye. It is also the second largest taxpayer and pays $1.5 million to our school district, St. Mary S. student. But make no mistake, the Osborn faces a very competitive landscape. It's becoming increasingly outdated, and as it has done in the past, it must adapt, evolve, or possibly die. Delay increases uncertainty. We've been impressed with the many questions neighbors have asked regarding the project. We're impressed with the Osborn's responses. To date, the Osborn seems to more than meet every City of Rye request or requirement. We appreciate their transparency and commend their website, reimaginetheosborn.org. Having lived in Rye for 40 years, we've watched Rye's ill-conceived response to the Home Depot development. And we are watching in real time as the second iteration of developers on the border of Rye at the United Hospital site develop a more aggressive project on a much smaller space than that of the Osborn. We agree with a Rye City Council member who said to my Rye, the Osborn's designs, quote, appear responsive to the desire to preserving an open space feel for the adjacent residential neighborhoods while meeting its needs to have more capacity for senior living, something we as a broader community should embrace. End of quote. Our community is extremely lucky to be dealing with such a reasonable development partner. And we strongly urge the Planning Commission to move responsibly but expeditiously forward. Excessive delays might lead to an alternative scenario. Rye could find itself negotiating with a different corporate entity or a management far less reasonable with much less interest in our community. To those whose strategy seems to be delay, 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 we suggest you be very careful what you wish for. And to those who worry about the construction process, we remind you the Osborn has over 400 residents with little tolerance for disruption. Thank you.